I think that like for us, for Black folks, we need to remember our magic, our power, our healing, and then we need to remember that we are magical people.
Welcome to the Found Free podcast, where spirituality, activism, entrepreneurship, and self-care meet. I'm your host, Sabia Wade, and I'm very excited. I'm very excited to have my guest, my friend, my colleague, a person I look up to, all the things.
Keep going.
Yes, period. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Lama Rod Owens, and I am, what else should I say? I mean, I'm here, I'm queer, I'm Black, I'm just, trying to do the same thing. Like listen, I'm at these intersections of trying to get free and trying to be in the world and try to have fun, and all of it,
Yes.
And also I'm a Buddhist and all this other stuff, but like we'll get into that. I'm a Buddhist teacher, right? So I'm a profound spiritual leader as well.
Real
so
but also big deal.
I guess it depends on who you ask.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, to me it's a big deal.
Oh, thank you.
But you as a person is a big deal. So I think like it's important to like name who you are outside of your work.
Yeah.
Because I feel like a lot of times, especially with your work, people are like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're a person, though.
I am. I'm a person. I'm sometimes messy. I'm sometimes petty. It's so funny because like my work is life, right? I mean, I made it my work to figure out how to get through life. Right, because I thought that was the most important thing that I could do.
Deeply understood.
And like, yeah, and I like to have fun, and then like there are things that like, that define me. I have my curiosities and my things that I do to have fun and experience pleasure. But
pleasure.
Yeah.
Do you get to have that as like a spiritual? Like I feel like sometimes the spiritual like leader, if you will, kind of trope is like you sit, especially Buddhist. It's like sit down, meditate for 20 hours a day.
I don't do that.
like think about obviously all the atrocities of the world. Do the healing that needs to be done. Talk to people. But like, what is fun and pleasure for you?
I mean, like watching, TV, binging a show. Like, God, what am I binging now? I am watching. Oh, I just finished watching Capote versus the Swans.
What is that?
It's not a Black show.
Obviously, I knew that. I knew that.
Well, it's like a Ryan Murphy production, so it's Truman Capote. So you know who Truman Capote was, the gay writer who wrote his famous book was In Cold Blood.
I have a lot of reading to do. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I had to read In Cold Blood in high school, so that's how and A Christmas Story.
I remember that.
Yeah, where he's like
Cold Blood was nowhere near my high school or any experience.
Well, we read everything in high school, up in Rome, Georgia,
Okay.
But yeah, Truman Capote, he was a very influential gay writer. Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Okay.
Yeah, so he wrote the book for that. That's the basis for the movie. So functioning in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I think he died in the mid 80s. But he, I guess like many affluent, talented gay men, had his flock of like society women.
Okay, now we're getting me intrigued.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so he was a gossip, right? And he was entrenched in all of these like elite circles, right? And all these really wealthy women, this group of wealthy women who he called the Swans.
I want to watch it now. Now it's giving, because it was sounding a little like out of my,
No, it's really good. I mean, it's a lot of themes that come up in it, but he decided to start writing this book that exposed their secrets, which also meant the secrets of their very powerful husbands.
So we're like spilling historical tea.
Yeah.
We're spilling a lot of tea in this. Okay, now I can see like the pleasure because it's also like it sounds like there's a historical space to it, but it's also like real life and how people move and how power navigates and how sex navigates and how pleasure navigates.
And everything, money, gender, everything, right? And it was just like he put those secrets out, and then they just kind of all split up, so they went to war with each other. And so the series is about that conflict that they were moving through and who won, who didn't win.
I'm going to get into it.
Yeah, I think it's worth it.
And then I'm going to message you and be like,
please do so.
Listen.
Please do so, yeah.
Also,
okay.
Question.
Okay.
Because like sometimes I talk and I'm like, I'm like, every, black femme, not every, but like a lot of us who be like, girl, child, like that's just me. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, gotta make sure.
Yeah.
We have to make sure that everyone's feeling good.
Just like go over the boundary and I'll let you know.
Okay. Okay. And you're
when to bring it back.
No. Okay. Yeah, because I be like, girl to me is like gender neutral.
No, for real. Absolutely.
It's like I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling you a thing because I'm comfortable.
But that's our language though. That's like black, femme, queer, like culture. Like, hey girl, what's up, girl? What's up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So one of the things we have to get into.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. There's so much to get into with you. But okay.
I've heard that before.
It's layered. I think like being people that are so layered in our identities.
Yeah.
Like there's just it's just a mix. Even with myself, sometimes I'm like, I know that people can't keep up. Yeah. Because they're like, 1 minute she's doing doula stuff. 1 minute she's talking about kinky stuff. 1 minute she's talking about spiritual stuff. 1 minute she's talking about that.
That's my experience of you too. I was like, what does she do?
I've had people literally be like, what do you do? And I'm like, I live my life. And that's why I connected to your message when you were I really wanted to like, my work is my life. Yeah. And sometimes there's hardship with that.
Yes.
Complication with that, right? Because there isn't that hard line.
Exactly.
But it's also, like, I do, generally speaking, wake up excited.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I generally wake up, like, excited. Like, even when people are like, Sunday blues, I'm like, no, Monday. Yeah. I'm cool. Yeah. Like, I'm going to meet with Davina, who's, like, my manager, not, like, on my team, my manager director. I'm so happy to talk to her. I'm like, so what we doing? What's the week looking like? And, of course, there's challenges, but then there's that hardship on separation.
Yeah. I mean, we just mirror each other. Right? Like in that, and like, I mean, it's just the complexity of what we do, but it's also like, I'm going to choose my labor, right? Instead of the labor choosing me. That part. And then I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to create the structures that make sense to me, right? It don't have to make sense to anyone else.
And it won't. I guarantee you that it won't.
Exactly. And I'm going to like follow my pleasure. I'm going to follow my passion. I'm going to do my work, right? And I'm going to chill with it. Because I don't think our ancestors worked like they did for us to feel like we don't have the capacity to choose our joy and to choose the real work that like lifts us and feeds us.
And right? I think too, like especially like in the essence of choice, it's like I don't believe that our ancestors, who unfortunately at different points had to choose, like, this is my profession, I stick to it for 30, 40 years. Yeah. I think, like, they gave us the space to be like, well, that worked for me for a year. It's not working anymore. Yeah. So what is the next thing that I want to do? Yeah. And I think sometimes when people see that, they can view it as, like, this person doesn't have a focus, or they don't have this, or they're everywhere. You're like, no, everything makes sense for me.
For me. Yeah.
like whoever's going to work with that or rock with that are going to get that. Yeah. It doesn't have to make sense for everyone in this very, like, especially in, like, right, a world of capitalism, a world of this, where it's, like, you have to invest in one idea, and you have to do that for the rest of time. Yep. And it's, like, I don't want to do that that makes me sad, actually. Yeah. And so that's why we get into spaces where like, what do you do? And let's just do everything.
I do everything, and I do what I need to do. I do what I'm called to do. Like, I don't have those boundaries. Like sometimes I wake up and I'm like, oh, I need to figure out how to do X, Y, and Z.
Same.
And it's like completely out of the box. It's coming from left field, right? And then that's why we call in people who can support our vision and our dreams, because we're visionaries and dreamers, you know?
Oh my gosh. Okay. We're going to just be mirroring each other during this whole thing, which is fine. One of the things I think that people need to release themselves of, and this is generally, right? Like, everyone's not this way. But I've learned that I've had to release myself from being both a visionary, a strategist, and a doer, and the this. Like, I've definitely learned that, like, I am a visionary, right? And I love implementing a strategy, but I don't want to do the day-to-day. Once we get into that, baby.
That's it. Bingo.
like, once we get into that, I have now lost interest. Not because of the actual thing, but it's just that process. That's not, I don't have to do everything from step A to step like to Z, right? Like, I have to bring in people. And I think that's like the part of community where it's like, it's some people who just in their being, they're super highly focused on this part. They know how to get through this part. They know how to aid you in this space, right? And I think like a lot of people hold that weight of like, well, if I have an idea, I have to know everything, be everything, do everything.
Yeah. Well, it's like being an artist, right? And then you're like, okay, I have this vision, and I know what it feels like. I can't tell you exactly what it is. So I want to invite people into like helping me to shape this vision, but they have to be flexible enough as well to like,
because I'm going to change every day.
Every day, the fluidity. And like my team knows that. It's just like I'll say one thing one day, and then like we're in the process of doing something. Then I'm like, listen, I'm talking to God right now.
And that's not it.
You know, it's not. This is hurting my spirit. We need to change this, right? And they're like, okay, you know, let's do it, because you know, really, the point is that like, yeah, we can like have this kind of fluidity, but we produce work that people vibe with, that people get with, right? And that's the point. Like the process is going to look one way, but that process is going to get me to something that you connect with.
Yes.
And as long as you're connecting with that and chilling with that, then like I feel like I have the agency to make the choices in the process to get us there.
And the choices that I make, that fluidity is what people feel energetically in whatever they're consuming. Right? Like you see, of course, there's a product. Maybe it's a course. Maybe it's an Instagram post. Maybe it's whatever it is. But when people feel that fluidity, I feel like that has been a bigger gift to my entrepreneurship, is that people are like, oh, you change, and I can feel that allows me to change. And I'm also, it's also like, you can be here, you can really rock with me. You can also leave if it's not for you.
Exactly.
Like, it's deep fluidity. But, okay, so I want to get into this whole Buddhist thing. You know, you're like Buddhist teacher, person thing. Can you give us a little bit, a little bit more of that? Yeah,
God, where do I start? I wasn't raised Buddhist. I think that's important, you know. You know, and just to let people know, like Black people can be Buddhist as well. I think Tina Turner proved that for us, right? Because let's just put it out in the open. Tina Turner is responsible for a vast majority of Black people in Buddhism.
It was our first time being exposed.
Yeah,
it was the first time. Like obviously, a lot of us watched it, and love got to do us. And watching her story, especially like the younger people, right? Like, and seeing her connection to Buddhism and how it helps her to move through a very transitional time in her life. That was my first.
Me too.
Because it definitely like that became like, oh, it's not just a white people thing.
Yeah. But that didn't influence me. I was like, that's good for Mother Tina, right? But no, I mean, in college, I took a world religions class in Buddhism, you know, but still wasn't interested, right? But, you know, you get we sometimes, some of us get there. I got to this point in my early 20s where I was like, I'm not functioning anymore. Like, the world is winning.
I mean, ooh, child, you taking me back. My mental health was in the toilet. Everything was like, who am I? What am I? What relationship am I in? Ooh, child, yes. Go ahead. I was
losing the battle. You know, Satan had me. And then, but I was really fortunate because I was living in Boston, right, at that time. So I moved from here to Boston in my early 20s. And I was just surrounded by people like doing all kinds of different stuff, right? And I was just like, okay, that gave me permission to question, right? And like, long story short, right, I started meditating, right? And that was the first kind of medicine, that I started taking seriously. It was mindfulness, just basic mindfulness, just paying attention. There was no philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no philosophy. I was just like, okay, I just need to pay attention. I need to get grounded. And then that started really working very well, And then all of a sudden, Buddhism was it. I was like, oh, this is it. Like, this was my taste. This meditation was a taste. But now this is it. And I bought into it. Completely.
You went all the way.
I was extreme. Like, I had barely started practicing when I was like, no, this is my whole life. I'm going to become a teacher. This is what I'm going to do. And my friends who had been practicing for years were just like, confused. To say the least, they were just like, how can you just show up and already have a plan? I was like, I can't explain it, but when you know, like when you find your path, right, the door just opens, the red carpet rolls out, and you're just like, okay.
And it feels good in your body.
It feels good.
You notice that you're like,
yeah.
Wait, like,
yeah.
I feel good, even though, like, because I imagine, like, when you're saying, when you say, like, oh, become a Buddhist teacher, there's years.
Yeah.
There's hours. There's sacrifice. There's so many things that go into it. So it's not like, oh, I'm going to sign up for like a 1-year course, get a certification.
Exactly.
It's like a real commitment.
It's a real commitment, right? And so at the beginning, I knew Tibetan Buddhism was my path. And of course, the Dalai Lama, everyone knows who the Dalai Lama is, right? So the Dalai Lama is like the representative of Tibetan, Buddhism, Tibetan religion, Tibetan culture, right? And I loved Tibetan Buddhism because it was so, well, first of all, let me just say there are many kinds of Buddhisms.
Yes.
So when you start looking into Buddhism, it's like looking at a buffet. Right. And you have to figure, okay, what am I going to eat? What am I like, what's my mouth ready for? What do I have a taste for? It can. But it wasn't for me because Tibetan Buddhism was the tradition that was surrounding me. So I didn't even want to explore other traditions.
Right?
When
you know.
Yeah, you just know. So I was like, this is it, right? And Tibetan Buddhism it felt really extreme. And I felt that extremity or that extreme energy met my intense extreme energy, because I was like heavily into a bunch of stuff, like particularly activism. I was a full-time activist. I was out on the streets being young.
You like to be met with that energy.
Yeah, like I wanted that intensity. I was intense. I needed an intense practice to help ground me, right? So I got into Tibetan Buddhism and I started meeting other lamas. So lama in Tibetan Buddhism means teacher. So I started meeting lamas, started practicing with them, and then just got led to my primary lama, as we say, root teacher, my primary teacher. And he lived at a monastery in the Hudson Valley in New York. So I didn't have to go. That's also another thing that people assume. Oh, you went to Tibet or you went to India. No, I went to New York.
You were New York chilling.
Like a lot of these teachers started coming to America in the 60s and 70s and 80s and establishing these monasteries and retreat centers and all of that, right? My teacher had done the same thing coming from Tibet, right? And I moved to the monastery, and overall I spent 5 years training in monastery, but 3 of those years were in a cloistered retreat.
So were
experience.
You like in that experience of living on a monastery, are you like building tiny homes and cleaning, like doing gardening and like cooking for
except for the tiny home building, right? People were building. You know, I mean, people build stuff, but yeah, I mean, all of that. Like you're I mean, not self-sufficient, but you're having to learn how to do certain kinds of work and jobs to support the community, like cooking, cleaning, building, straightening up, whatever it is, right? But when I first moved there, I was living a year, just in the main facility of the monastery, just like getting used to monastic life. I wasn't a monk then,
Got it.
but I was just a resident of the community who was preparing to go into this deeper immersion experience.
Funny enough, this may be funny, it may not be. Let me fix my arm, Lord.
Let's just say it's funny.
Okay, let's say it's funny. Okay. So, at one point in my life, I was so interested in doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
Yes. Say more. Say everything.
Yes. At one point in my life, I was literally looking into that whole thing. Like, I was just like, because like Buddhism came into my orbit. I would say, like, obviously I saw what love's got to do with it, but that wasn't like the main thing. My family is definitely like Southern Baptist, that whole thing. And when I used to go to church as a young Sabia, I was like not convinced, right? And I wasn't not convinced of the holiness.
Right.
I was convinced of that part, but I wasn't convinced around the rules. Like I wasn't convinced around, and I think, then you realize that you're gay, and you realize that, right? You have all these things, and you're like, okay, I don't really feel like my presence would be accepted here to certain levels, right? And I think, of course, people have expanded, and we have different spaces with different religions and whatever. But yeah, so then like maybe in my 20s, I had that time where mental health was on the floor. I was in a awful baby queer relationship. All the rites of passages were happening.
Messy rites of passage.
Yes. Messy, so messy. And after that, like during the times of that messy relationship, I had started like seeking out like different spiritual this and different spiritual that, and like and just started like, even just, I don't know if it's like if you're into astrology, like the Sag in me, like I'm very like philosophical, right? So I started reading about like Kabbalah. I started reading about just like wanting to know like what are these things. So I think at that time, because I'm 35, but at that time, I think, I don't know, Madonna could have been talking about Kabbalah, right? Like, everyone was talking about these different types of like religions or different like spiritual like whatever. And so I was like, I think in that realm of reading about these different religions where I came in touch with Buddhism, and I'm pretty sure I just like read something that was just like, this makes sense. And I think a lot of it, of what made sense to me, was that it wasn't about performing spirituality, right? Like, and this is no shade to like Black churches and all that, right? This is just like things that I experienced where like when I was little, I would like, oh, like everyone has to dress up. Why?
Me too.
Right? Like I'm like, why? Like what if that wasn't like what you have access to, or what if like that? Like it was just like those things to me that felt like, and also I wasn't. I'm giving a full beat today, but like generally speaking, like I'm pretty like. I can get full beat, but I'm pretty chill, right? I have a mix of masculine and feminine energy, and the way that I present myself, and the way that I move in the world. And so, like, also it was like high femme. Like I had to be performing high femme all the time to be seen as like this spiritual this. And I remember like even as a kid, I went to North Carolina. My family lives in North Carolina, and it was like we were in the kitchen, and the men were like watching football, and they were like, oh, you need to go snap some peas. And I was like, why I gotta snap the peas? I don't want to do that. So it was just like these like things that were kind of battling my level of who I was. I always felt like it was a battle. And so when I got like really into Buddhism, and I think for me, the first thing I heard around Buddhism was just sit. That was really the first message I heard from Buddhism was like, just sit down, just sit. Just sit down. Just think. I don't care about what you wear. I don't care about where you sit. I don't care about who you sit with. I don't care. Like, it was just like, and it felt like for me, because I'm also a very like solitary person. It felt like something that gave me guidance, that my strength and my understanding of spirituality didn't have to be in a group to start. It could be just within me. right? And that was the thing that I was like, oh, I can just chill. So then actually, when I was in Massachusetts, because you're trying to live my life. You're trying to live my life. Because I used to live in Worcester. That's when I started that's when I started being a doula. And so when I was there, that's when I started going to different like temples.
Oh yeah.
And going to different like different like, little walking meditation here, a little something here. And I just love the fact that like you just came in on a Wednesday, put your shoes where they supposed to put your shoes at. Whatever you had on, everybody didn't know each other. Yeah. I didn't know none of them people. They didn't know me, but it was just like, hey, we're going to sit here together for a few. Yeah. Maybe we're going to talk a little bit about this. Maybe we're going to just walk in the space together. Yeah. And something about that was so just like soothing to me. And of course I was like, I was, my best friend. I'm like, you want to come, girl? Like, you want to,
right.
To start bringing people just to be like, and I think I was kind of scarred by like the 10-hour church sessions when I was in youth. And I was like,
it takes a while to get the Satan out, get the devil out the door,
And I was like, I could be here for 30 minutes. Like, we could do, I could just, love that. But then I started going to longer sessions with like talks and things like that, and just really enjoying the messages. And so that really just put me in a space of like, is this a path that I want to walk in more depth? And I think even now, like, I'm almost finished my spiritual direction certification, been like really sitting in spiritual direction sessions with people. Oh my gosh, I'm going to reveal something.
Okay.
Are you ready? Because let me tell you. Okay, I was on TikTok the other day, and it was like, just be honest about who you are. And I was like, I am honest. First of all, don't yell at me. Right? And then I pulled a couple cards, and it was like, girl, just... Okay. So... in my spiritual journey, like in my spiritual life, right? Like I feel like I have like a mix of Buddhism, a little bit African spirituality, and just a mix of like whatever comes in there, comes in there. It is what it is, right? Yeah. But I am the creepy friend. What I mean by that is I don't think I'm creepy, but I can see how others think I'm creepy. I am the tell you that you're gonna be sick that day and wake up in the morning in a panic and call you and be like, Are you sure you're okay? Because I'm the talk to people in my dreams who are not with us and tell you your whole life about somebody I don't know. I'm that friend. Like, I'm the one who's going to be like, oh, your dad. They said. Like, I'm that person.
I get that. Oh, I absolutely get that. Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'm that person. So I think, like, in this next iteration of life, because, it's always iterating. I'm always like, whatever. Found free is kind of a expression of that.
well, isn't it just a remembrance though? Because like we lost. I don't know. I have to think through that one more. But like, I think that like misplaced, definitely forgotten. I would say like the place of. How would we say like the village wise person, the village healer? It's too much. It's too much happening right now. Now we're just reading each other, right? But like, I think that's like what we're returning to. I think that like for us, for Black folks, we need to remember our magic, our power, our healing, and then we need to remember that we are magical people, because I think Christianity, the way it was taught to our ancestors, was meant to like make us distrust our power and our lineages, our deities, and I think it's coming back, because I think this is an age of decolonization, right? But decolonization is like remembering, like this is what we lost, and now it's time to go back and reclaim it again. So it just feels like you're just like awakening to this again, and we have to be able to learn how to hold space for the wisdom of the seers and the healers again,
That's why I'm trying to link up with you, because I'm like, hello, can we talk about something?
Yeah.
But I think like, okay, so I have a couple questions.
Okay. Well, let me get back.
Okay, get back.
Because like with the whole monastery thing, right? Yeah. So I was there 5 years. 3 of those years I was in cloistered retreat, silent retreat with, a couple of other guys, right? And that was the training, like it was mostly being alone, like you have your own room, right? And you're practicing meditating alone for 3 years. So it's like no music, no TV, right? You don't get to have visitors, right? And then you just kind of like have these years of just going really deep inside, deep inwardly, right? And then you complete it, like you graduate, like we actually graduate from the program, and then you get the title Lama if you want it. You get it, and then you, of course, you decide what you want to do afterwards.
Sure.
And I decided I wanted to be a full-time teacher because that's what I knew I was going to be at the very beginning.
Yeah, so you were very clear about it.
It was very clear. Literally voices dropped in early on and said, this is what you will be doing. Right. I don't know what those voices were. Maybe the ancestors. Who knows? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like if they were heard and like they guided me in the direction I needed to go.
And I think too, like it speaks to how important. Like I think I have a lot of experiences where people are like, well, how did you know that you wanted to go this path or do this thing or whatever? Yeah. And I think like for me, a part of our liberation, right, is like that embodiment that we talk about.
Yeah.
And when people think about embodiment too, they think about it in such like a, like this like whimsical, like I'm just gonna know everything or whatever. Yeah. And it's like, no, it's not that. Sometimes you just hear a voice and you're like, okay, this is what I need to do. Or you feel a thing, right? Like I always tell people that I don't know everything that I'm supposed to do or what the next step is or what the answer is. And people ask me, especially in regards to business, they're like, do you have a degree? I'm like, I don't have any degrees. I have none of that. But I know what I like to feel.
Yes. That's it. Well, that's intuition.
Yeah.
It's intuition.
I just know what I like to feel. And so, like, sometimes in my business choices, there's A and there's B. Both of them make sense. Yeah. And I don't have any data to support that one is going to be better than the other. But I know how I like to feel. Right? Like, even in my, like, with my team, like, sometimes they want to like over explain options. I'm like, please don't. Just tell me 1, 2, 3, and I'm gonna go with how I feel. Yeah,
exactly.
And I think that's like embodiment.
Yes.
Versus like this like, because the first time like real shit. When I like heard about embodiment and I like started to learn about it, every time I would go into space, it would be mostly white people. I'll be one of very few people of color, maybe the one black person, right? And I started to, and even at one point, I started to, I was going to like somatic practitioner school and all that, and I like left that for many reasons, but also one of the main reasons being like my blackness involves embodiment, like the way that I move, the way that I like to listen to music, like those things are starting points for getting deeper into our bodies without always having to have the exact language and understand the exact science and all of that. And people feel like, oh, if I don't have the funds or the education, I can't. And I'm like, no, you're ready. You have it. You and yourself already have it. Just get back to your ancestors. Get back to the things that make you feel good, the people that make you feel good. And then go from there.
And even beyond that, it's like apprenticeship. Like, it's not about going to a program or a school, but it's about saying, okay, this person does something really well. Can I go and ask them if I can like work with them, shadow them, apprentice with them? Like that's how it worked before, And
that's how it works in doula world too, right? Like people say something about doula work, and I'm like, when I became a doula, right, I started with the Prison Birth Project and with incarcerated folks, and a bunch of it really was just being in an apprenticeship. A bunch of it really was like just having someone to ask the questions to when I was at a birth. Like it was just being in community. We're doing the best that we can, right? Like Marianne being like my main teacher, who I still talk to this day. I'm like, because it's still an apprenticeship. I'm like, so I have a question about this. Like, what is this thing? Yeah. But do you think that we live or are in a space where people, I don't know if it's like find value in apprenticeship or set up space for apprenticeship or even really appreciate like the quality that can come with not just a certification but like just being at someone's feet, honestly. And I think there's a part of humility that comes with apprenticeship.
Yes.
right? To say like I don't know, and like that means I am gonna have to sometime do the things I maybe don't want to do because I just want to get right into the meat.
Yeah.
But like apprenticeship is starting from this level.
Yeah. But I think that's how you get to mastery is through apprenticeship, right? You know, and I think that we have to understand what real transference of knowledge and wisdom and skill actually is. And like going to a graduate program, right? Often, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I went to graduate school, but that was after I spent 5 years in the monastery. Like, that was my real schooling, right? You know, that was my core training. And then everything else is just like ornamentation, right? Beyond that, like, but like exactly as you said, like how do we return back to like sitting at the feet of a master, right? And people still do it, you know. I'm still an apprentice. I still have multiple kinds of teachers that I'm studying with, right?
And I love to be a student.
Me too.
I love,
Me
and I'm
too.
like, and like as I get like older, more forward in my business or whatever, I'm like, oh, you want to tell me something?
Yeah.
Or you want me to sit down and okay?
Yeah.
Like I want to be a student. I feel like there's such like, I don't know if you experience this maybe because of like your work, especially like being a leader in your space. Like, do you experience that like I want to be humble. Like I want to sit in humility. I want to, because I have to keep my head on straight too.
Yeah. Well, and it's like even kind of along the same lines. It's like I want to just like go and sit somewhere and be with other students, but that's hard now because
it's so hard.
when I walk into a room, like it was a spiritual space, you know, aligned with this, my communities. Yeah, it's like you know, there's Lama Rod coming into the space, you know. And it's like, no, I'm just sitting. I'm just here to be a student, to learn, you know. And you have to hold that kind of burden. So like, you have to be careful, you know. And but I also have been really fortunate. There are like, I'm thinking about 2 communities I'm a part of, an herbal community, you know, as well as a yoga community, where I'm just like, I'm a student. Right.
I love it.
And people hold that space. It was just like, I noticed you.
But I'm not gonna like make it a thing.
No, I'm like, I'm holding space for my reactivity, but I just want to say I see you and I appreciate you and I'm glad you're here, you know. And that's like the sign of a really mature community, when they're able to hold that, when they can hold the space for other teachers coming to sit with this teacher that everyone's there for.
And I love a mix of a mature community and a mature teacher.
Yeah.
And when they mix, allowing you to be a student, like, and also a community that's allowing you to like, that is holding you.
Yeah.
And you're also like, I have something to give when it's called for and when it's asked for. Yeah. Right. But I'm not coming into space wanting to be recognized.
And that's a sign when people are, because I have known people who are like, I need to be recognized everywhere that I go. Right. And, you know, I just feel like if you're actually doing the work, like becoming a teacher, becoming whatever it is that we are, you hold that space of authority, of spiritual authority. You should feel that as a weight. That should be I mean, I don't want to use the word burden, but it should be, it should feel like labor.
It's something.
Right. And it's heavy and it's laborious, and you should actually long to put that down sometimes, you know, and
you should be intentional.
Exactly. Intentional. Yeah.
Because like a lot of like activism work, like we talk about, you know, power systems. Yeah. We talk about that, right? And like my main kind of like, you know, framework is reproductive justice. And like the thing that I aim to like implement within myself and implement with like the people who work with me, learn from me, whatever, is that part of reproductive justice is analyzing power systems. Right. But that power system is also yourself. Right? So like it's not just the, you know, the government, this. Of course, there's a power system that we're constantly analyzing, but it's also being aware, what is a power that I also hold with my titles, with whatever. And it's like even teaching my students about intersectionality, right? Like, I am Black and I'm queer, of course, and like social standards, that's not the closest thing to power. But like, baby girl has done a lot of work. So when I step into certain spaces, people know me, right? And like, I'm like you, I'm like, like sometimes I'm like, I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be any of that. And like, to know me outside of work is to know that I really be low key. Like when I'm like traveling, people are like, "Are you out?" I'm like, I'm chilling.
Mm-hmm.
I'm being unknown.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not being perceived.
Mm-hmm.
like I just want to stay in that space.
Yeah.
And when I go into certain events, like if I'm hired to do something, of course, know me. That's a part of. I get it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like sometimes there is a challenge with, and I've learned it. I guess I just noticed over the years that you may also have this experience where like there's some things that I do want to go to.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that I do want to, like, I'm like, damn, that would be so cool. Like, I would love to go there, but I don't want to go there as Sabia Wade to do.
Yep.
I want to go there as, like, basic bitch.
Yeah.
I just want to be under the sea. I just
But, you know, the other piece of that, too, we want to go to these spaces and just be a student. But at the same time, who is ever holding that space, the teacher or whomever, also has to be mature enough to let us be there. And not feel that insecurity, because that will happen. They will see, oh, here comes so and so walking into the space. Oh, they're trying to take over.
And you're like, no, I want to learn
from
you.
Yeah, yeah.
I actually want to learn. I want to like be in the space. I want to experience, like, because I remember, like, before I created the organizations and the things that I've done, like, I remember going into spaces and not being known, like, and sometimes. No shade to nobody, right? But sometimes that means that I was treated like,
well, like, yeah.
And then it was like, right? And then there was other times where, like, I can look back and be like, wow, that was a gift. That was a gift.
Like invisibility.
Yes, it was a gift to come in and, like, not worry about someone saying, what about this? Or what about that? Or, like, how are you? Or, like, or to come in and not, like, now all of a sudden there's, like, this special treatment that, like, I don't, that's what I don't want, because I think we all want to be cared for, but I don't necessarily want it more than anyone else in this space. Yeah. Or a bigger level of it, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I miss that sometimes. And I don't even think I'm, like, and you know, like, I don't even think, like, I'm that girl all the time. Like, not, because, you know, imposter syndrome is a thing, and, like, sometimes you're, like, whoop-de-woo. Like, and then sometimes I get to spaces and I'm like, oh, maybe I am that girl.
That's another interesting point, too, because I had to let go of that imposter syndrome because, like, it really impacted how I was able to hold people. Like, I just couldn't have all this doubt because that could lead to harm. Right? You know, because I'm taking people through all this energy work. I'm taking people deep into their consciousness. And it's, you know, it will get rocky if I am not holding steady and confident in what I'm doing. But that doesn't mean I'm arrogant or anything. Like, I'm talking about confidence and integrity. Like, I know what I know. I have trained to know what I know. I am confident in that.
Yes.
I have the feedback and the authorization from gatekeepers of these lineages that I represent who have told me I am ready. So I just kind of ground myself in that, you know?
That's powerful, though. Like, that whole, like, I am ready. Yeah. I think that's what I, like, personally, like, sometimes I feel like I know. Yeah. You know, I know what I know when I know. Yeah. And then there's other times where I'm like, am I, because I guess, like, the fears, like, I don't want to ever be arrogant. I don't ever want to be. So I think sometimes, like, and my friends and family tell me this, they're like, you're being too humble.
Yes.
Maybe you're back, that. Right? Because you're holding so much space for, like, I don't want to be this. And now you're, like, backing away from what you actually are.
Yeah. But that isn't that how we've survived through this kind of humility. Right? It's like, I need to, like, back. I need to shut down a little bit because then I'll get read as uppity. Right? And we historically know how that works out for us, right?
Yes, and that uppity thing, too, is also sometimes held within our family systems. Yeah. Right? It's not just, like, the outside. It's also the family system that you're like, oh, well, I've been, you know, throughout my years, this person said if I care about myself or if I make this choice, I'm being uppity. And it's like, no, I'm not. I just really want to live my life. I just want to have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. But so what is that? You know, and so that thing is like, therefore, this is about you, not about me. It's about, like, the ways in which you're projecting your insecurity and really historical trauma onto me. And I have been working to disrupt that, right? Like, I am saying, you know what? I deserve to be here. it was the same thing, very similarly to when I came to Buddhism. I was like, well, I don't see other Black people doing it. I mean, it was Tina Turner, right? It was me and Tina Turner, like, but Tina Turner was like a whole different tradition, though, But like, when I came into my tradition, Tibetan Buddhism, it was like, no Black folks. I got to my monastery to start training. They're like, well, you need to know that you're the first Black.
You're making history here.
But it was interesting because there was some other firsts that came after me as well. There were some trans practitioners coming after me, and I was like, oh, like someone has to be the first, right? But that's not where I stand on. That's not the marketing and the brand here. The brand. So yeah, the brand is not because the brand isn't I'm a Black Lama and look at how special that is, because we know that's a dead end. But the brand is, no, look at the training and the depth of wisdom that I offer in the work, right? Because it's easy to rest on being the
Read
first.
My book. See what I'm about.
Yeah.